Wealth management is not just for the wealthy. Everyone is entitled to their best retirement possible. Welcome to The Retirement Engineer with Jim Kruzan, your path to a bigger, bolder retirement. Brought to you by Kaydan Wealth Management, a firm that specializes in serving the mobility technology industry. In this podcast, we help you maximize your resources and engineer your best retirement through a process-driven approach so you can get the little things right. Drawing from years of expertise, Jim and his guests will simplify complex wealth management strategies and explore actionable ideas to help you protect your hard-earned wealth and take control of your future. Now, on to the show.
While nearly half of Americans make New Year's resolutions, only about 25% stick with them beyond 30 days. And even fewer, less than 10%, actually accomplish their goals. But the good news, your financial goals don't have to fall into that category. With the right plan and a little guidance, you can set resolutions that stick and truly transform your financial future. In today's episode, we'll share practical strategies to help you beat the odds. Plus, we're giving away a free document to help you identify financial resolutions you can start on today. Let's make this the year you take control of your money. So, Jim Kruzan, how can we create and stick to financial resolutions?
Well, first off, Happy New Year, Patrice.
To you too.
So this is the time of the season where we all kind of sit down and spend a little bit of time reflecting a bit on last year and creating new lists of things we'd like to do this year, goals as well as resolutions. That said, unfortunately, as you mentioned, creating those goals and achieving them can often be two entirely different things. Now, there are a variety of reasons for that. The goals might be just simply unrealistic. We might have a lack of specific planning. We have a goal, but we have no idea how to get there. The goal itself might not be all that specific, way too general, hardly ever achievable. We might be so encouraged to have so many goals, we might feel overwhelmed. And more than likely, there's a much greater chance that a handful of those might never get completed. And that's not a good thing either to build self-confidence. There's always the worry about lack of accountability. And in many cases, while we might have a great goal and we're encouraged to strive forward, we really don't have a method to track our progress, nor do we reflect on our progress in incrementals. So what we hope to do today is kind of touch on those things, try to get a better sense for what works, what doesn't work. Generally speaking, the more you can think about how those individual goals can personally drive well-being, the better off you are. As an example, making a budget, getting your insurance act together, meaning let's review those insurance policies and see if you have enough or too much coverage. With that comes this well-being of taking care of your family and your heirs. Maybe it's about trying to save a little bit more. Maybe it's about starting a retirement plan. All of those things, think about personally how they can help. And magically, they're assigned a higher priority. And there's, with that, a greater opportunity to succeed. So it's important to kind of look at that. Also, in creating some of these goals, the idea is to turn it into a habit so we don't have to think all that much about it. There's a rule of thumb that people use, which is called the 2190 rule. And what it simply says is, hey, it takes 21 days to turn something into a habit. And it takes 90 days of regularly participating in that habit before it's actually ingrained in your lifestyle. And I think those who fail along the way Either don't give it the full 21 days, or after that, they don't reflect on it and use it on a regular basis to have it ingrained in their DNA, kind of in their lifestyle. And as a result, it's much easier to fail. But if you can do that, if you can get beyond the 90 days, there's a really good chance that it becomes autopilot and you can achieve far more than you ever thought you would before. So why don't we get started and kind of take this from the very beginning? So if we're looking at goals and objectives and we're trying to find how to be better at achieving those, what's the first thing you need to do? Well, the first thing, before you start making a list of all the goals you want to achieve this year, is it's best to reflect back on last year. Let's look at the goals that we had at the beginning of last year. Let's look at the ones that we've actually achieved and reward yourself for that. Encourage yourself to go on. But more importantly, let's really think about the ones that we didn't achieve and why. Was it because we were inundated by so many? It got lost in the shuffle. Was it because we had to, at some point during the year, somewhat pivot and relocate or allocate resources to a different goal or objective? Was it that we had a great goal, but we had no accountability? Or the person or app that we assigned the accountability, maybe that wasn't the right person or the right app in the first place. And by learning those mistakes, we can then refocus and drive those goals to completion in the upcoming year. So the first thing we need to do is not get down on the fact that we missed some goals, but really learn as to why we missed those. Change a little bit about how we go forward, and there's a much better chance that we'll be able to achieve those things, which I think is really important. And I know I often run the risk of setting way too many goals. And at the end, I always think, well, 7 out of 10 is not bad. If that were a batting average, that would be Hall of Fame. That's pretty good. If I were in college, 70% isn't all that great. But just the same, I'd rather think of baseball and the Hall of Fame than a C or a D grade, depending on the curve. And learning from those mistakes, incredibly important.
You're talking about college. Let's talk about SMART. Let's talk about SMART financial goals. How do we set those?
Yeah, well, there's a couple things that we need to do, and we need to make sure that goals are very realistic. There's an acronym that's often used, SMART, S-M-A-R-T, and it really is helpful. So what that stands for is S is specific, meaning, well, this time of the year, coming off the holiday, coming off of a lot of parties and big dinners and all of that, I'd like to lose weight. I think everybody else has that same goal at the beginning of the year, judging from how crowded health clubs are typically in January. And then because people tend to fail in those goals, it's much easier to get on a machine in March for the same reason. So be specific. It's not that I want to lose weight. I want to lose 20 pounds. It also has to be measurable. It doesn't help to have a goal if we can't break it up into smaller bits and pieces and measure progress along the way. In the case of weight loss, super easy, right? We can jump on a scale. We know where our base rate is, where I am today and where I want to be. And incrementally, I can see what progress is being made. Is it achievable? There's something about reaching perhaps a bit too far in certain goals. In the case of weight loss, I guess depending on body type and what one's normal weight is presently, a goal of losing 20% may not even be healthy for somebody. It might not be achievable or shouldn't be considered achievable. And then, is it relevant? And by relevance, we're referring to, does it provide direction? Does it provide some degree of motivation? Does it have some kind of purpose? there's absolutely no reason to have a goal that doesn't have some relevance. Obviously, in my case, if I were to lose weight, I'd probably have a better time in the golf season. I might score better playing golf. I'll have more energy to run around with my grandson. There's a lot of things like that that I can say are extremely relevant. And as a result, it also encourages me to achieve those goals. And then the last thing that's also important is it's got to be time bound. That's the T in SMART. It's not enough to say, hey, I want to lose 20 pounds. I've got a scale. I can measure it. I can break it up. It's more important to say, hey, I'd like to lose 20 pounds by the 4th of July, which is not quite, but just about 6 months away. I know if I've got 6 months and a 20-pound goal, I've got to lose about 3.3 pounds a month. That doesn't sound so bad. And if there's about 4.3 weeks in a month, that's a little over 3/4 of a pound per week. Sounds reasonable and pretty achievable. So it's important to do that. And just like I just did with weight loss, it's really easy to do that as well with financial goals and objectives. If the idea is we want to save more money, let's get specific. I'd like to save a certain dollar amount. And a certain dollar amount is actually easier to measure than a percent of salary. Although we mostly talk about what's the goal, we want to save X number of percent of salary. So if I'm earning 100,000 a year and I want to save 10,000 a year myself, that's 10%. But now I have a goal of saving $10,000. That's specific. I want to do it over a time bound by the end of the year. I know that. What does that look like? How do I break this up into pieces? Is it relevant? Sure. More money I save, the more experiences I'll have in retirement, the better and easier it'll be to educate and pay for my kids' college education or whatever the case is. But it's easy to do that. And it's also easy to increase the savings rate by doing that incrementally. If I've really got to save more than 10% to achieve that $10,000 or $12,000 goal, well, I can start at 10 and I'll say this next quarter, I'm going to raise that by 1%. And the next quarter, I'll raise it by another 1%. Again, these are very measurable. And by doing that, you'll find that the goals are actually kind of fun to achieve, especially when you can reward yourself for small victories. Hey, this month I achieved my weight loss goal. I lost 3 pounds, as opposed to, oh my God, I still have 17 pounds to go. It makes a lot of sense. And it's fun, and you can have fun with it.
With so many competing priorities, and I'm sure people have more than one goal, how do you decide what to tackle first?
Yeah, well, having too many goals provides a tendency to be overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And then once you're overwhelmed, you've got the stress and all that associated with it. So you're less excited about trying to achieve these things. And what finally happens typically is it's not like you're overwhelmed and you've got 7 goals and you're going to achieve a handful of them, but not all of them. You might find you feel so overwhelmed and so stressed out about this whole thing, you might not achieve any of them. So it's really kind of important to identify those goals from the standpoint of priority or relevance. If I've got a number of different goals, I would look at identifying 2 or 3 maybe at the most.
Mm-hmm.
And I would look at the ones that have the greatest impact on my finances. Maybe that would be saving more. And then we can go through how much and relevance and everything else. Maybe it's reducing debt. Maybe it's finally getting my act together and talking to an attorney and getting those wills and trust and rearranging those beneficiary agreements that I've been talking to myself about doing for such a long period of time. Those things probably have a much greater impact, let's say, than I want to get before the end of the year to 12% savings of my salary from where I am today at 10. So by knocking off the bigger ones, those that provide the biggest bang for the buck, it makes some sense. And there are a number of those, right? We just talked about a few. Establishing an emergency fund also makes some degree of sense. We talked about getting rid of high yielding debt, increasing retirement contributions. Or it might not have anything to do with retirement or net worth building. It might be, in addition to that, getting serious about college education savings or saving enough to afford a home. You know, these days, quite a bit different than decades gone by when home ownership was far more affordable. There are an awful lot of people that make really good salaries. They just simply can't afford a home today because of the double whammy. The fact that home prices, real estate, quite a bit higher than it was, let's say 5 years ago, but also interest rates and mortgage affordability is significantly, vastly more expensive today as well. So saving for a home certainly has a huge amount of well-being. So those are some things that certainly make some degree of sense. And for those who are kind of interested in learning more about financial resolutions, we do have a financial resolution PDF. Check the show notes for more detail. It's a really useful tool to get you started, not only developing those resolutions, but helping you achieve them as well.
Speaking of achieving, though, I mentioned in the beginning how nearly half of resolutions, well, 25%, they're gone after 30 days. So many don't make it. Jim, what's the secret to making a resolution stick?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, hey, remember the 2190 rule. We need to make it a habit, and then we need to ingrain it in our DNA. And I think a lot of folks who tend to fail just never get beyond or even get to the habit stage. I mean, think about it. That's, oh my God, that's, if I'm sitting down New Year's Eve and I'm writing this list of things 3 weeks into January, if that's not a habit already, I'm kind of toast. That's never going to get achieved. And there's so many other things going on at the same time. But there are some things you need to consider. One, obviously, is the goal's got to be really clear. We talked about that as well. Remember the example of weight loss. We need to then kind of break it down in the smaller pieces. I work with, as many know, a lot of engineers. We want to re-engineer this thing. We want to kind of work backward, like I did in that sequence about weight loss. Let me reduce this to the ridiculous. I need to lose less than a pound a week. That doesn't seem that hard to do considering a 20-pound goal. And then we need to, as we develop these habits, we kind of need to stack these habits on top of those that are already achieved so that they're all sort of ingrained in this DNA. A couple of other things that people just don't do that would really help quite a bit. You need to establish a, let's call it an accountability partner. You know, it's one thing to have a goal. It's really interesting because it's easier to achieve it if you say it out loud. And it's even more easy to achieve it if you say it to somebody.
True.
And then make them accountable. So in our household, when it comes to all things financial, my accountability partner is my wife, Dina. And we get together quarterly. We just did this last weekend to review quarter at hand, year at hand. And we look at a number of different things. What did we save? Where are we with net worth? What have we done in terms of gifting, et cetera? And how is that relative to the last several years? So we look at that. And if everything looks good, we reward ourselves. It's simply in Dina's case, it's a high five. Here, high five. We did just fine, and that really helps quite a bit. But as far as an accountability partner, it doesn't have to be the same person, nor does it have to be the same person for all of your goals. You know, as an example, if one of my goals was to be a better person spiritually, maybe I would spend a little bit of time talking to my parish priest and seeing what advice he might have, and asking him to periodically check in on me to see if I've accomplished some of the stuff we've laid out. Or if I wanted to make sure that every day I was praying or listening to scripture, maybe I would use an app for that on my phone that not only would have a new verse or a new prayer, but it would also identify the number of days I've been listening to that and the number of days I've been listening to that in a row. And it will also tell me if I've missed a day as well. So those kinds of things, and it makes a lot of sense. But break down those goals and then find the best person possible to be your accountability partner, and then track those results. And make sure that we have check-ins, because it's one thing to have an accountability partner, great, but if you're never talking about where you are because you've never quite figured that out, it just doesn't help. So it's important to do that. And last but not least, you got to celebrate the victories.
Yes.
Whether those are the big picture victories, hey, we achieved that yearly goal, it's probably far better to celebrate the incremental victories. Hey, I lost 2 pounds or 3 pounds or whatever the case is. And then eventually, before you know it, the big goal's also achieved.
This is true. And then the reward, it could be more than a high five. How about a milkshake,
There you go. That sounds a whole lot better. I think everybody should reward themselves with milkshakes on everything you accomplish.
Why not? Why not?
Why not?
Jim, is there something else we haven't mentioned here you want to make sure we do?
All
good stuff.
Yeah, let's see. I think we've covered just about everything, with the exception of, hey, make sure you check the show notes, because we do have some PDFs there that we think will be really, really, really helpful.
All right, then. Well, as you've heard, financial resolutions, well, you know this yourself. They can feel overwhelming, but with reflection, clear goals, and a commitment to turn them into habits, you're setting yourself up for success. Remember, it's not about perfection, it's about progress. Start small, stay consistent, celebrate those wins, get that milkshake along the way.
Right.
And don't forget to download our free document to identify financial resolutions you can begin working on today. So here's to making this your most financially empowering year yet. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe so you don't miss future episodes, and share it with someone who could benefit. And follow @Kaydan Wealth on social media. Let us know what you think in the comments. Your feedback and topic suggestions, they help us improve and make a bigger impact. Thanks for supporting our show.
Thank you for listening to The Retirement Engineer with Jim Kruzan. Click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. Visit our website at www.kaydanwealth.com or give us a call at 800-638-6900. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of Jim Kruzan and this episode's guests, not necessarily those of Kaydan Wealth Management. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.